A millionaire fires the humble housekeeper until her small daughter cries and tries to get out of her wheelchair to hug her. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The March sun lazily descended over the southern part of Los Angeles, tinting the windows of the penthouse apartments that rose like ivory towers along the coastline of Santa Monica. At 847 Viscount Street, the mansion of the Johnsons stood out among the modern constructions like a monument to power and sophistication. Its 3 floors of white marble contrasted with the lush greenery of the French garden that adorned the entrance, where fountains of crystal clear water hummed an eternal melody among the imported rose bushes. Arthur Johnson adjusted the knot of his Italian tie as he walked through the mirrored hallways of his residence. At 42, the businessman bore the weight of an empire built brick by brick since he was 25, when he inherited a small construction company from his father and transformed it into one of the largest developers in the state. His black hair, cut with millimetric precision every 2 weeks at the same barber in West Hollywood, was starting to show silver, strands at the temples, marks he considered distinctive of his professional maturity. Arthur's brown eyes, always alert behind designer glasses, scanned every room in his house with the same meticulousness he applied to analyzing financial spreadsheets. Everything was in its rightful place. Contemporary American art hanging on the walls with mathematical spacing, baccarat crystal vases positioned on Carrara marble tables, and ornamental plants arranged according to a landscaping project that cost the equivalent of a middle-class apartment. "Mr. Arthur," the deep voice of Zuleika echoed through the main hall, interrupting his morning inspection. The housekeeper, a 60-year-old woman with graying hair neatly tied in a bun, approached with silent steps across the floor. Her hands, calloused from 15 years of service to the family, contrasted with her always immaculate uniform, a navy blue dress she ironed herself every morning before dawn. "What is it, Zuleika?" Arthur did not stop walking, glancing at the gold Rolex adorning his left wrist. "It's about the new housekeeper, Mrs. Lucy." Zuleika hesitated, biting her lower lip. "There was an incident in the living room." Arthur halted in the middle of the corridor, turning slowly. His eyes narrowed, and the muscles in his jaw tightened, a signal that all the household staff had learned to fear over the years. "What kind of incident?" "The Venetian crystal vase on the coffee table. It broke, sir." The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur clenched his fists, feeling his nails dig into his palms. That vase was not just a decorative piece. It was an heirloom from his maternal grandmother, Mrs. Helen, the only person who had managed to offer him genuine affection during his rigid childhood in a Swiss boarding school. "Where is she?" Arthur's voice came out controlled, but Zuleika sensed the storm brewing behind the apparent calm. "In the kitchen, sir, trying to pick up the pieces." Arthur walked toward the kitchen with firm steps, his Italian leather shoes echoing down the corridor like a countdown. Upon reaching the door, he was met with a scene that irritated him even more. Mrs. Lucy, a small woman in her 50s, was kneeling on the marble floor of the living room, delicately gathering the crystal shards with her trembling hands. Lucy Smith bore on her brown face the marks of a lifetime dedicated to hard work. Her dark hair, streaked with white strands, she had neither the time nor the money to disguise, was tied back in a simple ponytail. The light blue uniform, bought with her first paycheck at the Johnsons, already showed signs of wear at the seams, but was impeccably clean, just as she had learned to keep everything around her during decades of domestic service. "I'm sorry, Mr. Arthur," Lucy murmured without looking up, her voice heavy with the soft accent of her rural upbringing. "It was an accident, I swear to God. I was cleaning around and bumped into it by mistake. I'll pay for the damage. Sir, you can deduct it from my salary." Arthur watched the humble woman at his feet, feeling a mix of anger and disdain. How could someone be so careless? How could an adult not manage to perform a simple task without causing damage? These questions hammered in his mind as he mentally calculated the value of the destroyed piece, $15,000, the equivalent of 10 months of the salary he paid the housekeeper. "Get up," he ordered, his voice sharp as a blade. "Stop picking up the pieces. The damage is already done." Lucy slowly rose, wiping her hands on her apron, and finally meeting Arthur's gaze. He saw there a profound sadness, but also an unshakable dignity, the same expression she wore when she had to explain to her children, still young, why there would be no Christmas presents that year. "Sir, I can make up for it somehow. I can work extra hours, do a more thorough cleaning." "No," Arthur interrupted, adjusting the cuffs of his dress shirt. 3 weeks. 3 weeks you've been working here, and you already managed to break a piece worth $15,000. That shows exactly what kind of person you are." "Mr. Arthur, please!" Lucy clasped her hands together, her eyes filling with tears she tried to hold back. "I need this job. My grandson, he has problems and needs treatment. I promise this will never happen again." "Promises don't glue crystal back together," Arthur retorted, pulling out his wallet from the inner pocket of his jacket. He counted out some bills and extended them to Lucy. "Here's your pay for the week. Zuleika will escort you to the exit." At that moment, a soft sound of wheels against the floor. The marble echoed down the hallway. Clara Johnson appeared in her motorized wheelchair, moving with the skill of someone who had adapted to her physical limitation after 2 years of practice. The 7-year-old girl had the same brown eyes as her father, but they sparkled with a sweetness that Arthur had long lost. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her slender shoulders, and she wore a pink dress with a butterfly print, one of the few concessions Arthur made to his daughter's childhood preferences. "Daddy, what's happening?" Clara asked, her small voice carrying an innocent curiosity. "Nothing for you to worry about, my princess," Arthur replied, automatically softening his tone when speaking to his daughter. "Aunt Lucy was just saying goodbye." Clara looked at Lucy and noticed the tears that the woman could no longer hide. During the 3 weeks of their acquaintance, the girl had developed a special affection for the new employee, the first person in the house who spoke to her like a normal child, not as a fragile patient needing constant care. "Aunt Lucy, are you leaving?" Clara asked, maneuvering her chair to get closer. Lucy knelt down to the girl's level, careful not to let any more tears fall. During those weeks, she had realized that Clara was not just a spoiled, rich child. She was a gentle soul trapped in a world of medical protocols and excessive care. "Yes, my angel. Aunt Lucy has to go," she replied, her voice choked. "But why? Did you do something wrong?" Arthur was about to intervene when something extraordinary happened. Clara, who hadn't moved her legs in 2 years since the traumatic car accident that had completely changed her life, began to fidget in her chair. Her fingers clenched on the armrests, and she leaned forward with a determination that no one had seen since before the accident. "Don't go, Aunt Lucy," Clara whispered, and then, as if a supernatural force propelled her, she stood up from the wheelchair. The silence that enveloped the room was absolute. Arthur felt his legs go weak. Sarah let out a stifled gasp, and Lucy stood frozen in shock. Clara took a shaky step, then another, and finally ran the few meters that separated her from Lucy, throwing herself into the woman's arms with an emotional force that echoed throughout the mansion. "Don't go, Aunt Lucy," the girl repeated, burying her face in the shoulder of the woman who had become much more than an employee in her life. Arthur watched the scene as if he were in a dream. His daughter, whom the best neurologists in the country had declared had little chance of recovery, was standing, walking, running. The man who controlled empires and made multi-million-dollar decisions without hesitation found himself completely lost in front of that domestic miracle that defied all medical and rational logic. Lucy embraced Clara with all the care in the world, feeling the small and precious weight of the girl in her arms. At that moment, she understood that something much greater than a simple job was at stake. She was witnessing a miracle that she had seen grow day after day through small gestures of affection and encouragement she offered the child during cleaning hours. "My God," murmured Sarah, placing her hand on her chest. "How is this possible?" Arthur remained motionless, watching his daughter embrace the woman he had just fired. For a moment, all his certainties about control, discipline, and consequences shattered like the fragments of the crystal vase scattered across the floor. Clara was walking, and the only person who seemed unfazed by the miracle was precisely the one he had judged as incompetent. The afternoon sun streamed through the wide windows, illuminating the improbable scene. A rich girl who was walking again, a humble woman who had lost her job, and a powerful father discovering that not all the money in the world can buy the miracles that happen when least expected. Arthur remained still for long seconds, watching Clara embrace Aunt Lucy as if his mind refused to process what he had just witnessed. The man who had built an empire based on logic and predictability found himself facing something that challenged all his rational understanding of the world. How is this possible?" he murmured, more to himself than to anyone present in the room. Clara pulled slightly away from Lucy, but kept her small hands holding the woman's apron, as if fearing she might disappear at any moment. Her brown eyes sparkled with a joy that Arthur hadn't seen in 2 long years. "Daddy, I walked. Did you see? I walked all the way to Aunt Lucy." The girl's voice overflowed with enthusiasm, but also carried a touching vulnerability, as if she herself couldn't fully believe what she had just done. "I saw, my princess, I saw." Arthur approached slowly, each step calculated as if he were walking on thin ice. He knelt before his daughter, extending his trembling hands to touch her, as if he needed to confirm that she was really there, standing before him. "How do you feel? Do your legs hurt? Are you dizzy?" "No, Daddy. I feel normal." Clara smiled, that smile that used to light up the whole house before the accident. "Aunt Lucy always said that one day I would be able to, and she was right." Arthur raised his eyes to Lucy, who remained kneeling on the floor, her hands still trembling from the emotion of the moment. "What do you mean by always said?" His voice carried a mix of confusion and something that could be interpreted as suspicion. Lucy took a deep breath, discreetly wiping away the tears that insisted on rolling down her cheeks. "Mr. Arthur, during these 3 weeks, while I was cleaning, Clara stayed with me in the living room. We talked, and I saw that I felt the urge to get up, so I started telling her some stories. Stories about brave children who overcame difficulties." "What kind of stories?" Arthur stood up, crossing his arms over his chest. His defensive posture was an automatic mechanism whenever he felt he was losing control of a situation. "Stories from my homeland, sir, from Texas." Aunt Lucy stood up as well, gently holding Clara's hand. "I told her about a girl who lived on a farm and broke her leg falling from a tree. Her parents were poor. They couldn't afford an expensive doctor, but she had a grandmother who knew some remedies, some exercises. Every day the grandmother would make her granddaughter wiggle her toes, move her legs slowly. Exercises." The word came out of Arthur's mouth like a shot. "You did exercises with my daughter without medical supervision?" Sarah, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. "Mr. Arthur, perhaps we should call Dr. Smith immediately. Clara might have hurt herself." "No," Clara interrupted with surprising firmness for her 7 years. "I didn't get hurt. Aunt Lucy was just teaching me to wiggle my toes, to bend my knees slowly. She said my body was just scared, and that I needed to teach it not to be scared anymore." Arthur ran his hand through his hair, messing up his perfect hairstyle. His mind was racing, trying to understand the implications of what was happening. Clara was walking. That was undeniable and wonderful. But she had achieved this through unauthorized methods applied by an unqualified staff member he had just fired for breaking a vase. "Lucy," he said, his voice more controlled now, "can you explain exactly what you did with my daughter, in detail?" Lucy looked at Clara, who gave her an encouraging nod, and then turned her eyes back to Arthur. "Sir, I raised 3 children on my own. My oldest, Paolo, when he was little, went a while without walking after he hit his head falling off his bike. The doctor at the clinic said it could be a psychological issue, that sometimes a child gets scared of getting hurt again." "And what did you do?" "First, I talked to him a lot. I let him talk about his fear, cry if he wanted to. Then I started with small movements, always playing, always with care, never forcing anything." Lucy paused, observing Arthur's expression. With Clara it was similar. I could see she wanted to move, but it seemed like something was holding her back. What thing? Arthur felt a tightness in his chest, an uncomfortable sensation that perhaps there were aspects of Clara's condition he hadn't considered. "Fear, sir." The girl was scared. She told me she remembered the sound of the accident, the glass breaking, her mother screaming. Lucy hesitated, realizing she was treading on delicate ground. I think in her mind, moving could mean something bad would happen again. The silence that followed was heavy. Arthur remembered that terrible afternoon 2 years ago perfectly. He had fought with Rachel the night before. A fierce argument about money, infidelity, and parental neglect. The next morning, Rachel had left home with Clara, speeding through the streets of Miami in her red convertible, more interested in answering the incessantly ringing phone than paying attention to the traffic. The accident had been Rachel's fault. She ran a red light and was hit by a delivery truck. Clara, in the passenger seat, had hit her head and suffered spinal trauma. The doctors said she was lucky to survive, but would likely never walk again. Rachel had come out physically unscathed, but the guilt consumed her so much that she began drinking compulsively, leading Arthur to file for divorce 6 months later. "Did Clara tell you this?" Arthur asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Little by little, sir. A child needs to talk, needs to let out what's hurting them inside. Here in this house, everyone speaks softly around her, as if she might break. But she is strong, sir. She just needed someone to believe she could get better." Sarah cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Mr. Arthur, perhaps we should focus on what to do now. Clara is standing, thank God. But she needs proper medical supervision." "That's true," Arthur agreed, taking his phone out of his pocket. "I will call Dr. Smith right now." "Dad, no!" Clara clung more tightly to Aunt Lucy's hand. "I don't want to go to the doctor today. I want to stay with Aunt Lucy. Please." Arthur looked at his daughter, seeing genuine fear in her eyes. Over the past 2 years, Clara had gone through dozens of medical appointments, physical therapy sessions, tests and evaluations. Each visit to the hospital was a trial that left the girl exhausted and depressed for days. "Clara, the doctor needs to examine you to make sure everything is okay." "But I already know everything is okay," the girl protested. "My legs don't hurt. I can wiggle my toes. Look." She lifted one foot and moved her toes energetically. "Aunt Lucy taught me a bunch of cool exercises. She knows a lot." Arthur watched his daughter's movements, noticing that she really seemed to have full control over her lower limbs. It was as if the last 2 years in a wheelchair had been just a nightmare from which she had finally awakened. "Lucy." he said slowly. "Where did you learn these exercises?" "From my mother, sir. She was a midwife back in the countryside, knew a lot about the human body. And then, when I came to the city, I worked in a house where the boy had similar problems. The lady at the time took me to the appointments, and I paid attention to what the physical therapist taught." "Why? You didn't mention this when you started working here." Lucy lowered her eyes, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Sir, I came here to be a cleaner. You didn't ask if I knew other things. And, well, people like me aren't usually taken seriously when talking about doctor stuff." Arthur felt a strange weight in his chest. How many times had he treated employees as mere cogs in a machine, never considering that they might have valuable knowledge, experiences, or insights beyond their specific roles? "Dad," Clara tugged at his dress pants, "you're not going to fire Aunt Lucy, are you?" Arthur looked at his daughter, then at Lucy, who awaited his response with a mix of hope and resignation. The broken vase still lay on the floor, its fragments shimmering under the golden afternoon light. But there, before him, was a miracle far more valuable than any piece of crystal. His daughter was walking again. "No," he finally said, surprising himself. "Aunt Lucy is not going anywhere." 3 weeks had passed since the miracle in the living room, as Sarah had begun to refer to the episode in her whispered conversations with the other house staff. The routine of the Johnson mansion had subtly but significantly changed, creating an atmosphere that Arthur was still trying to understand and accept. Dr. Smith, a renowned neurologist trained at Harvard, adjusted his gold-framed glasses as he reviewed Clara's test. Results for the 3rd time. His office in Beverly Hills was a temple of modern medicine, immaculate white walls, state-of-the-art equipment, and framed diplomas attesting to decades of expertise in treating neurological injuries. "The tests are normal, Arthur," the doctor said, closing the folder with precise movements. "MRI, CT scan, electromyography, all within the expected parameters for a complete recovery. It's extraordinary." Arthur leaned back in the leather chair, watching Clara play with dolls in the children's corner of the office. The girl moved naturally, as if she had never spent 2 years confined to a wheelchair. "But how? Do you explain this clinically? 2 years ago, you said the chances of a complete recovery were minimal." Dr. Smith drummed his fingers on the mahogany table, his face showing the perplexity of a man of science confronted with something that challenged his academic knowledge. "There are documented cases of psychosomatic paralysis, especially in children who have experienced severe trauma. The brain, as a protective mechanism, can shut down certain motor functions even when there is no permanent physical damage. And what triggers the recovery? Well, traditionally, intensive psychological therapy, specific medications, supervised physical therapy for years." The doctor paused, clearly uncomfortable. Not improvised exercises applied by a domestic worker. Arthur noticed the condescending tone in the doctor's voice and felt an unexpected irritation. In recent weeks, he had observed Clara interacting with Aunt Lucy during the times he worked from home, and he couldn't deny that there was something special about that connection. "Doctor, with all due respect, the traditional methods did not work for my daughter for 2 years. Whatever the explanation, she is walking now." "I understand your satisfaction, Arthur, but it's important that Clara maintains proper professional oversight. These home techniques may have worked by coincidence, but they can also cause harm if applied incorrectly." Clara approached the table carrying a doll with golden hair. "Dad, can we go home? Aunt Lucy promised she would teach me how to make corn cake today." Dr. Smith frowned. "Arthur, you allowed this woman to continue treating Clara." "She's not treating Clara," Arthur replied, more defensively than he intended. "She's working as she always has. The Activities they do together are just part of natural interaction. Dad, Clara tugged at his sleeve, tell Dr. Smith about the exercises Aunt Lucy taught me. They're fun. The doctor leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. What exercises, Clara? Aunt Lucy teaches me to move my toes like they're little fish swimming, and to bend my knee like a butterfly opening and closing its wings, and she sings really pretty songs while we do it. Dr. Smith looked at Arthur with an expression that mixed concern and professional disapproval. Arthur, I need to be direct. Physical therapy exercises require specific anatomical knowledge, understanding of biomechanics, qualified supervision. Doctor, Arthur interrupted, feeling an inexplicable need to defend Aunt Lucy. My daughter is walking perfectly. She is happy, healthy, and in no pain. I don't understand what the problem is. The problem is that you are putting your daughter's health in the hands of someone without qualifications. What if she applies some incorrect movement? What if it causes a real injury? The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the doctor's secretary, a young blonde woman who gently knocked on the door. Dr. Smith, your next patient has arrived. Of course. The doctor stood up, extending his hand to Arthur. Think about what we've discussed. I have an excellent physical therapist who can take over Clara's care. Dr. Patricia graduated in Europe, has a master's in neurorehabilitation. Thank you, Doctor. I will consider it. On the way back home, Clara chattered excitedly in the back seat of the Mercedes, talking about the plans she had for the afternoon with Aunt Lucy. Arthur watched his daughter in the rearview mirror, noticing how she had regained not only the movement in her legs, but also the liveliness that characterized her personality before the accident. Upon arriving at the mansion, they were greeted by the unmistakable aroma of boiled corn wafting from the kitchen. Arthur followed Clara through the hallways, finding Aunt Lucy in the spacious gourmet kitchen, surrounded by ingredients spread out on the black granite countertop. Hi, Aunt Lucy. Clara ran to hug the woman, who returned the affection with the warm smile that Arthur had learned to recognize. Hi, my angel. How was it at the doctor? It was good. The doctor said I'm perfect. Clara climbed onto a tall stool to reach the adaptasois, Donna Lucia, Aunt Lucy, Zuleide, Sarah, Paraíba, Texas, Dr. Humberto, Dr. Smith, Ipanema, Miami, Renata, Rachel. The kitchen counter was cluttered. Have you started the cake yet? Not yet, honey. I was waiting for you to get here so we could make it together. Lucy noticed Arthur standing in the kitchen doorway. Good afternoon, Mr. Arthur. I hope you don't mind the mess in the kitchen. Arthur observed the space that, for the first time in years, seemed truly lived in. Shelled corn, flour scattered, eggs cracked in a bowl, all that mess created a scene of domesticity he hadn't experienced since childhood. Don't worry, he replied, surprised by the sincerity of his words. Clara, aren't you going to disturb Aunt Lucy while she's working? It's not work, Dad. We're having fun. Clara had already started mixing the batter with a wooden spoon. Aunt Lucy, tell that story about the girl who made cakes to sell at the market. As Lucy recounted stories from her childhood in rural Texas, Arthur found himself watching the interaction between the two. There was a naturalness there that contrasted sharply with the formal and protocol-driven environment Clara was used to. The girl laughed, asked questions, got her hands dirty, behaving like a normal child. Mr. Arthur, Lucy interrupted his thoughts, would you like to try the cake when it's ready? It's a recipe from my mother, very simple, but it tastes good. Arthur hesitated. When was the last time he had eaten something homemade, prepared without the sophistication of the chefs he usually hired for social events? If it's not too much trouble. Of course not. Dad, come here and help. Clara extended the sticky spoonful of batter. Try it to see if it's sweet. Arthur stepped closer, accepting the spoon Clara offered him. The simple taste of sweet corn instantly transported him to lost memories of childhood. Before the European boarding schools, before business responsibilities, before he became the controlled man he was today. "It's very good," he admitted, noticing Clara's radiant smile. "Aunt Lucy knows how to make a lot of delicious things. She said she's going to teach me how to make pancakes and corn pudding too." As he watched Clara and Lucy pour the batter into the pan and place it in the oven, Arthur realized that something fundamental had changed in the dynamics of his home. It wasn't just that Clara was walking, it was the genuine joy that had returned to her eyes, the spontaneity of her gestures, the renewed confidence in her own abilities. Later that night, after Clara had gone to bed, Arthur found himself reviewing his daughter's medical reports in his office. Dr. Smith's words echoed in his mind. Homemade techniques, unqualified, unnecessary risk. But the facts were undeniable. Clara was not only physically recovered, but emotionally transformed. Sarah knocked discreetly on the door, carrying a tray with coffee and a slice of corn cake. "You didn't have a proper dinner today," she said, placing the tray on the mahogany table. "Thank you, Sarah." Arthur tasted the cake, savoring that comforting simplicity once again. "What do you think of all this that's happening?" The housekeeper, who had known him for 15 years, sensed the unusual vulnerability in the question. "Mr. Arthur, in all these years working here, I've never seen Clara so alive. Since she was little, she was always a quiet girl, but after the accident, she became even more withdrawn. Now she laughs, sings, makes a mess. And is that good? Sir, children need to make a mess. They need to get their hands dirty. They need to try new things." Sarah paused. "Aunt Lucy has a special way with her. It's different from everything we've tried before." Arthur nodded slowly, recognizing a truth that his rational mind still struggled to accept. Sometimes miracles come wrapped in such simple forms that they almost go unnoticed by those who only see complexity. 2 months had passed since Clara took her first steps toward Aunt Lucy, and the Johnson mansion seemed to have gained a soul that Arthur hadn't realized was missing. It was a May morning, and the Texas winter was beginning to show its first signs, with a cool breeze coming through the open windows, carrying the scent of flowers from the garden that Lucy had convinced Clara to plant. Arthur walked through the hallways with his usual morning coffee when he was surprised by an unusual scene in the living room. Clara was sitting on the floor, surrounded by colorful cushions, while Lucy helped her with exercises that looked more like games. The girl stretched her legs, flexed her ankles, and laughed as Lucy hummed a folk song. "Good morning, Mr. Arthur," Lucy greeted, interrupting the song. "Clara was asking me to do her exercises here in the living room today. I hope it's not a bother." "Dad!" Clara waved excitedly. "Come see how I can stand on my tiptoes. Aunt Lucy said it's to strengthen my muscles." Arthur watched his daughter execute the movement with precision, noticing how her muscles seemed more defined, stronger. Over the past few weeks, he had noticed subtle yet significant changes in Clara's physical development. She was running faster, had more endurance, and demonstrated motor coordination that even impressed him. "Very good, my princess," he praised, but his attention turned to Lucy. "Aunt Lucy, can I talk to you for a moment?" Lucy felt a flutter in her stomach, that familiar sensation that preceded difficult conversations with employers. "Of course, sir." "Clara, sweetheart, keep doing your exercises, and I'll be right back." Arthur led her to his private library, a room lined with dark mahogany, where shelves filled with business books and classic literature stretched from floor to ceiling. He closed the door and positioned himself behind the desk, a posture that automatically created a barrier between them. "Aunt Lucy, I've been observing Clara's extraordinary progress, and I need to understand better what exactly you are doing with her." Lucy nervously intertwined her fingers, her voice coming out softer than usual. Sir, I just play adaptações. Dona Lucia, Aunt Lucy, Clara Vasconcelos, Clara Johnson, local. Local do fisioterapia, physical therapy, faxineira, housekeeper, diploma, degree, curso superior, higher education, comunidade, neighborhood, marido, husband, emprego, job, salário compatível, salary commensurate, coordenadora terapêutica, therapeutic coordinator, mansão, mansion with her. I do some activities that I learned throughout my life. But what knowledge are these activities based on? Do you have any qualifications that I should know about? The question hung in the air like a veiled accusation. Lucy bit her lower lip, internally struggling with a truth she had kept hidden for a long time. Throughout her life, she had learned that people like her were not taken seriously when they mentioned formal qualifications. They were seen only through the prism of their current occupations. Mr. Arthur, I studied some things when I was younger. What kind of things? Lucy took a deep breath, gathering courage for a confession that could completely change Arthur's perception of her. I graduated in physical therapy, sir. 20 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur felt his legs wobble slightly, and he leaned on the table to maintain his balance. For 2 months, a qualified physical therapist had been taking care of his daughter, applying professional techniques disguised as play, and he had been completely oblivious to it. Physical therapy, he repeated slowly, as if testing the weight of the word. Why didn't you ever mention this? Sir, when I came to look for a job here, I said I needed work as a housekeeper. No one asked me if I had other qualifications. Lucy kept her eyes fixed on the floor, her hands trembling slightly. And, well, people like me are not usually believed when they talk about degrees. People like you, poor sir, black woman, poor, living in a neighborhood. When I say I have a higher education, people think I'm lying or that the degree isn't worth anything. Arthur felt a deep discomfort at Lucy's raw honesty. How many times had he himself made automatic judgments based solely on someone's appearance or occupation? How many opportunities had he lost by not seeing beyond first impressions? Why did you stop practicing your profession? Lucy's eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. When I graduated, my husband lost his job. I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and a physical therapy job at the time didn't pay well, required strict hours, and didn't allow flexibility to take care of a child. Housekeeping work pays daily. I can choose the hours, and I can balance it with taking care of my family. And the degree? Do you still have it? Yes, sir. It's kept in a folder at home, along with my transcript and internship certificates. Arthur ran his hand through his hair, undoing his impeccable hairstyle. He had hired a housekeeper and discovered that he had a qualified professional at home who was literally saving his daughter's life. Aunt Lucy, I need to see those documents. Do you think I'm lying? The question came laden with hurt, years of disbelief and devaluation echoing in Lucy's voice. No, Arthur replied quickly, surprising himself with the sincerity of his response. I believe you, but I need to understand. I need to process all of this. At that moment, soft knocks on the door interrupted the tense conversation. Daddy? Aunt Lucy? You disappeared. Clara's voice echoed from the other side of the door. Arthur opened the door, finding Clara leaning against the frame, clearly worried about how long they had been talking privately. It's all right, my angel. Lucy knelt to be at the girl's height. Daddy just wanted to talk a little with me. You weren't fighting, right? Because when Daddy talked like that with Mommy, they would fight really loudly afterward. Arthur felt a stab in his chest. Clara remembered the arguments that preceded the divorce and now associated private conversations with imminent conflicts. No, Clara, No one is fighting. Arthur knelt as well, getting to the height of both. Daddy was just discovering that Aunt Lucy is much smarter than he imagined. I already knew, Clara smiled, hugging Lucy. Aunt Lucy knows a lot of things. She knows about plants, about exercises, about stories, about food. She's like a walking encyclopedia. Lucy laughed, the first time she genuinely smiled since the beginning of the conversation. What's this, girl? A walking encyclopedia? It's true, and you never treat me like I'm going to break. Everyone here walks on eggshells around me, but you let me run, jump, climb on things. Arthur observed the interaction between the two, understanding why traditional physical therapy had failed with Clara. The professionals he had hired treated his daughter like a fragile patient, focusing only on the technical aspects of rehabilitation. Lucy treated her like a normal child who needed to regain confidence in her own body. Aunt Lucy, Clara held the woman's hands, can you teach Daddy some exercises too? He sits all day at that table. It must be bad for his back. Clara, Arthur protested, but Lucy was already studying his posture with a professional eye. The girl is right, sir. You hunch over a lot when you work. Some simple stretches would help a lot. Arthur found himself in a surreal situation, being physically assessed by his former housekeeper, who had just revealed she was a qualified physical therapist. Maybe. Yay! Let's do exercises all together. Clara clapped her hands. It'll be like a real family. The innocent phrase from the girl created a silence loaded with meaning. Arthur realized that, without planning or intention, his house had become something he never imagined, a home where people genuinely cared for one another. Aunt Lucy, Arthur said slowly, I would like you to bring your diplomas tomorrow. Not because I doubt you, but because I have a proposal to make. What kind of proposal, sir? I want to offer a new position, not as a housekeeper, but as Clara's therapeutic coordinator, with a salary commensurate with your actual qualifications. Lucy felt her legs wobble. 20 years ago, she had kept those diplomas as relics of a dream interrupted. Now, in the mansion where she had come to clean floors, an opportunity to practice the profession she loved was arising again. Mr. Arthur, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Aunt Lucy. Clara jumped, embracing her. This way you can stay with me every day, and you don't have to clean the floors anymore. Arthur watched the two celebrating, feeling a strange satisfaction as he realized that for the first time in years he had made a decision based not only on business logic, but on something much more powerful, the certainty that he was doing the right thing. There's one condition, he added, trying to keep a serious tone. Cornbread is still part of your therapeutic activities. Lucy laughed through her tears, finally accepting that miracles sometimes come disguised as unexpected opportunities. Saturday morning arrived with the sun filtering through the white linen curtains of the living room, creating golden patterns on the marble floor that Clara loved to walk on. Barefoot, it was 7 in the morning when Arthur came down for his usual coffee, but he was surprised by cheerful voices coming from the kitchen, a sound that had become increasingly common in recent weeks, but still caught him off guard. Good morning, Dad. Clara ran to hug him, her little hands leaving traces of flour on the dark suit Arthur wore even on weekends. Aunt Lucy is teaching me how to make tapioca. Come see how I can already stir the dough. Arthur followed his daughter into the kitchen where he found Aunt Lucy at the stove, stirring a creamy mixture in a non-stick pan. She wore a colourful apron over her light blue uniform, a small concession to the informality of Saturday that Arthur had started to allow. Good morning, Mr. Arthur, Lucy greeted him with a warm smile. I hope you don't mind the smell. Clara really wanted to learn how to make tapioca, so I decided to teach her before the morning exercises. And it smells really good, Arthur admitted, approaching the counter where Clara was sitting on a tall stool, stirring a bowl with focused movements. How are the exercises going? Is she doing everything right? Better than many adult patients I've treated, Lucy laughed. Clara is disciplined, never misses a session, and always asks how she can improve. Yesterday, she did 20 minutes of stretching without complaining once. Arthur watched his daughter, noticing how she had changed in the last 3 months. Not just physically, although it was undeniable that her muscles were more toned and her movements more coordinated, but mainly in her attitude. The quiet and withdrawn girl he had known after the accident had given way to a curious, energetic, confident child. "Dad, try this." Clara held out a spoonful of warm tapioca. "It's just like Aunt Lucy's." Arthur tasted the delicacy, savouring the creamy texture and subtle flavour that transported him back to distant memories of trips to the northeast during his college years. "It's delicious, my princess. Aunt Lucy said that when I become an expert in tapioca, she will teach me how to make couscous and cassava cake." Clara chattered excitedly. "And she will also tell me more stories about the place where she was born. Did you know there's a huge reservoir there where kids swim with fish?" Arthur exchanged a glance with Lucy, realizing how her childhood stories from the rural interior had become a cultural bridge enriching Clara's limited world. For years, his daughter had lived surrounded only by the sterile luxury of the upscale neighborhoods. Now she was discovering that there were other forms of childhood, other landscapes, other traditions. "Mr. Arthur," Lucy wiped her hands on her apron, "I wanted to talk to you about something, if I could." "Of course." "Clara, finish eating while we talk." Arthur followed Lucy to the porch overlooking the garden, where the flowers she and Clara had planted were beginning to bloom, in vibrant shades of yellow and red. The morning air carried the soft scent of jasmine mixed with the persistent aroma of tapioca. "Sir, it's about Clara's family, about her mother." Arthur felt the muscles in his back tense automatically. Rachel was a subject he avoided at all costs, especially in Clara's presence. Since the divorce 2 years ago, interactions between ex-husband and ex-wife had been limited to legal matters mediated by lawyers. "What about her mother?" "Clara has been asking about her. She wants to know when she will see Mommy again, if Mommy knows she's walking." Lucy chose her words carefully, sensing the growing tension in Arthur's posture. "Sir, I know it's not my place, but the girl needs to understand the situation." Arthur walked to the edge of the porch, watching the calm movement of Central Park in the distance. "Aunt Lucy, the situation between me and Rachel is complicated." "Every separation is complicated, sir. But Clara doesn't understand why her mother has disappeared from her life." "Her mother hasn't disappeared," Arthur replied, more defensively than he intended. "She has visitation rights. She can see Clara whenever she wants, as long as she is in suitable conditions." Lucy realized she had touched a deep wound. During the months working in the house, she had observed that Arthur avoided any mention of Rachel, and Clara had learned not to ask questions about her absent mother. "Sir, may I ask when was the last time she visited Clara?" Arthur hesitated, calculating mentally. "December, on Christmas Eve." 5 months ago," Lucy murmured. "And how was that visit?" The question brought back painful memories that Arthur had tried to suppress. Rachel had shown up last Christmas, clearly altered, speaking too loudly, gesticulating excessively, hugging Clara with a desperation that had frightened the girl. The visit had ended with Rachel crying in the garden while Clara hid behind Sarah. It wasn't productive. "Mr. Arthur," Lucy took a deep breath, "I'm not a psychologist, but I've seen many families going through difficulties. Clara needs to understand that her mother's absence is not her fault." "She knows it's not her fault." "Does she really?" "Because children have a remarkable ability to blame themselves for the bad things that happen." "Family." Lucy approached, her voice filled with maternal experience. When my husband left us, my oldest son spent months thinking it was because of something. He did. Arthur turned to face her, realizing for the first time that Lucy had also faced the challenge of raising children after a relationship ended. How did you handle it? I talked. I explained that sometimes adults make decisions that have nothing to do with the children, that the love he felt for his father wouldn't change even with the absence, and that it was okay to feel anger, sadness, longing. Clara never shows anger towards her mother because she doesn't have permission to feel that. Every time her mother's name is mentioned, everyone gets tense, changes the subject. The girl learns that it's a forbidden territory. Arthur contemplated Lucy's words, recognizing an uncomfortable truth. Since the divorce, he had created a protective bubble around Clara, avoiding any situation that might cause her pain. But perhaps, in trying to protect her, he was actually preventing her from properly processing her mother's absence. What do you suggest? That you talk to her. For real. Let her ask the questions she needs to ask, even if it's hard to answer. At that moment, Clara appeared on the porch, running with the renewed energy that characterized her mornings. Aunt Lucy, can I do my exercises on the grass today? The sun feels nice. Of course, sweetheart, let's get the yoga mat. As Lucy moved away to prepare the exercise materials, Arthur knelt before Clara, studying his daughter's face that combined his own features with the delicate beauty she inherited from her mother. Clara, can I ask you something? Sure, Dad. Do you think about your mom sometimes? Clara hesitated, as if testing whether she really had permission to talk about that subject. I do. And what do you think? I wonder if she's okay, if she knows I can walk. Now, if she misses me. Clara lowered her eyes. And sometimes I get mad because she doesn't come to see me. Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. It's okay to be mad, my princess. It's normal to feel that. Really? Really? You can feel anything you need to feel, longing, anger, sadness, and you can talk to me about it whenever you want. Clara threw herself into her father's arms, a tight hug that communicated years of repressed questions and stored feelings. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Clara, more than anything. When Lucy returned with the exercise materials, she found father and daughter embraced in the garden, sharing a moment of emotional intimacy that had been rare in the Johnson family dynamic. Aunt Lucy, Clara separated from her father. Dad said I can talk about Mom whenever I want. That's great, my angel. It's important to talk about the people we love, even when they're far away. Arthur watched Lucy spread the yoga mat on the grass, preparing for another session of exercises that had not only restored movement to Clara's legs, but also emotional communication to their family. For the first time, he understood that his daughter's healing involved not just physical therapy. It involved creating an environment where she had permission to be completely human, with all the complexities that entailed. As Clara performed her morning stretches under Lucy's loving supervision, Arthur made a decision he had been postponing for months. It was time to reach out to Rachel and create conditions for her to be part of Clara's life again, even if in a limited and supervised way. Some wounds need to be exposed to the air to heal properly. The call came on a rainy Tuesday in June, interrupting Arthur's meeting with investors for his new venture in Miami. The name Rachel flashing on his iPhone made him feel that familiar mix of anxiety and irritation that always accompanied any contact with his ex-wife. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Arthur stood up from the meeting table, walking to the panoramic window that offered a view of the entire South Beach area. "I need to take this call." "Arthur? Arthur, are you there?" Rachel's voice sounded different. More somber, more controlled than in the last times they had spoken. "I am. What do you want, Rachel? I heard that Clara is walking. Again. Is it true?" Arthur clenched his fists, irritated that information about his daughter was reaching Rachel through third parties, probably some mutual acquaintance in the social circles of Miami. It's true, for 3 months. 3 months? Rachel's voice carried a deep hurt. Why didn't you tell me? Rachel, you disappeared from Clara's life since Christmas. You don't return calls. You don't respond to messages. Why should I? Because I'm her mother, Arthur. Her voice rose in pitch, but still maintained a clarity that Arthur hadn't heard in a long time. Regardless of everything that happened between us, I am her mother. Arthur watched the rain trickle down the window, each drop following its own chaotic path across the glass. Where have you been all these months? In a clinic, in Aspen. The admission came laden with vulnerability. Arthur, I was hospitalized. Treatment for substance dependency. The silence stretched for long seconds. Arthur had suspected that Rachel's problems with alcohol and medication had worsened after the divorce, but he never imagined she had sought professional help. And how are you now? Sober, 4 months without drinking, without medication, doing therapy, attending support groups. Rachel paused. Arthur, I want to see our daughter. Rachel, I know you have every reason not to trust me. I know the last time was terrible, but I've changed, Arthur. I need you to give me... Arthur returned to the conference room, signaling for his partners to continue the presentation without him. He needed time to process that conversation. How did you find out that Clara is walking? Beatrice told me. She saw you guys at the mall last week. Beatrice was an old mutual friend, the wife of one of Arthur's partners. She said Clara was running, playing, that she seemed like a completely different girl. Arthur remembered that Saturday. He had taken Clara and Aunt Lucy to buy ingredients for a special recipe that Lucy wanted to teach. It had been the first time the three of them went out together, and Arthur was surprised at how natural it felt to walk through the mall with that improvised family formation. Arthur, please, let me see our daughter, just one meeting. I can go there, or we can meet somewhere neutral. It won't be like that, Rachel. If you've really changed, then you can accept some conditions. What conditions? Arthur looked out the window again, visualizing Clara playing in the garden with Lucy at that very moment. In recent days, following Lucy's advice to allow Clara to talk about her mother, his daughter had asked several questions about when she could see Rachel again. First, I want to see the medical reports from the clinic. I want to talk to your therapist. Okay. Second, the first meeting will be here at home with supervision, and it will be short, 1 hour at most. Who will supervise? Arthur hesitated. Sarah would be the obvious choice, but recently he had started to trust Lucy's judgment more regarding Clara's emotional well-being. Clara's therapeutic coordinator. Therapeutic coordinator? What kind of treatment is she undergoing? It's a long story. The important thing is that Clara is doing well, physically and emotionally, and I won't allow anything to disturb that stability. Arthur, I swear I won't cause any problems. I just want to hug my daughter. The vulnerability in Rachel's voice touched a part of Arthur that he had locked away a long time ago. Regardless of all the resentment he carried toward his ex-wife, she was Clara's mother. And Clara, as Lucy had observed, needed the opportunity to rebuild that relationship on healthy terms. Saturday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Rachel, if I notice any sign that you are not well, the visit ends immediately. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you so much. After hanging up, Arthur remained at the window for several minutes, watching the city's movement below while processing the implications of that conversation. When he finally returned to the meeting, his mind was divided between the numbers of the real estate venture and the complex family dynamics that were about to change again. That night, Arthur came home to find Clara and Lucy in the kitchen preparing dinner. The scene had become so common that he could almost forget how silent and formal his home had been before Lucy arrived. "Hi, Daddy." Clara ran to hug him, her hands smelling of garlic and parsley. "Aunt Lucy is teaching me how to make shepherd's pie. It's a recipe from her grandmother." "That's wonderful." Arthur kissed the top of his daughter's head, but his gaze met Lucy's, who immediately sensed that something had changed in his expression. "Mr. Arthur, did something happen?" "Aunt Lucy, I need to talk to you after dinner. It's about Clara's mother." Clara stopped stirring the pot, her eyes widening. "Mommy? What about Mommy?" Arthur knelt down in front of his daughter, holding her small hands. "My princess, your mommy called today. She's okay, and she really wants to see you. Is she coming here?" "Saturday afternoon, but it will just be a quick visit at first, so you can see each other calmly." Clara remained silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "She's going to be mad because I wasn't walking when she left, and now I am." The question hit Arthur like a punch in the stomach. He had never considered that Clara might interpret her physical recovery as something that should have happened earlier to avoid her parents' separation. "No, my angel." Lucy knelt down too, getting to Clara's level. "Your mommy is going to be very happy to see that you're walking. It has nothing to do with her leaving." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Parents sometimes need to step away to resolve their own issues. It's not the children's fault, and it's not something the children can fix." Arthur watched Lucy reassure Clara with a wisdom he was still learning to appreciate. Over the past few months, she had become much more than a therapist or employee. She'd become the stable maternal figure Clara needed during that transitional period. After dinner, when Clara went upstairs to do her homework, Arthur and Lucy sat on the porch to talk about Rachel's visit. "Mr. Arthur, may I ask how Clara's mother is doing? Has she sought treatment?" "She was admitted to a clinic for substance abuse. She says she's been sober for 4 months." Lucy nodded thoughtfully. "And do you believe her?" "I don't know. I want to believe for Clara's sake." But Arthur paused. "Aunt Lucy, I would like you to be present during the visit, to observe how Clara reacts and to help me assess if Rachel is really in a condition to be around our daughter." "Of course, sir. But may I suggest something?" "Sure. Let's prepare Clara for the meeting. Explain that Mommy has been sick, that she's taking care of herself now, but that she might be different from what Clara remembers. And let's agree on some signals with her in case she feels uncomfortable and wants the visit to end." Arthur admired once again Lucy's practical sensitivity. She always managed to anticipate the emotional aspects of complex situations and create strategies to protect Clara without depriving her of important experiences for her development. "Good. Thank you, Aunt Lucy, for everything. I know this is far beyond your professional responsibilities." Lucy smiled, that maternal smile that had become a comforting constant in Arthur's life. "Mr. Arthur, when we truly care about a child, there is no such thing as beyond responsibilities. Clara is special, and anything I can do to help her be happy, I will do." That night, lying in his king-size bed in the master suite, Arthur stared at the ceiling, trying to imagine what Saturday's reunion would be like. Part of him feared that Rachel's presence might disturb the harmony that had settled in his home. But another part, a part he was learning to listen to more, knew that Clara deserved the chance to rebuild her relationship with her mother, even if it involved risks and uncertainties. What he didn't anticipate was that Rachel wouldn't come alone on Saturday, and that she would bring with her a proposal that would completely change the course of their reconstructed family. Saturday arrived with a crystal-clear, blue sky that contrasted with the tension hanging over the Johnson mansion. Arthur had spent the morning organizing and reorganizing the living room, adjusting cushions, checking the air conditioning temperature, and performing small tasks that kept him busy while he tried to manage the anxiety growing in his chest. Clara was particularly restless, changing clothes 3 times and repeatedly asking if her appearance was suitable to welcome her mother. Lucy had suggested they do their morning exercises in the garden to help the girl relax, but even so, Clara remained uneasy, darting from the living room to the porch at every noise that might indicate Rachel's arrival. "Dad, what time is it?" Clara asked for the 10th time in half an hour, nervously adjusting the pleats of the pink dress she had chosen for the occasion. "It's 2:40, my princess. We still have 20 minutes. Do you think she will like how I look? Will she recognize me? I've grown so much in these months." Lucy approached, sitting beside Clara on the living room sofa. "My angel, your mommy will be delighted to see how much you've grown and how beautiful you are. A mother never forgets her child's face, no matter how much time passes. But what if she gets sad because I couldn't walk before and now I can?" Arthur knelt before his daughter, holding her small hands. "Clara, your mother will only feel joy seeing you well. Any mother would be proud to see her daughter overcoming difficulties." The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house like thunder, making everyone jump. Sarah appeared at the living room door, her face reflecting the same tension that enveloped everyone in the house. "Mr. Arthur, Miss Rachel has arrived." "Thank you, Sarah. Please show her in." Arthur adjusted his tie nervously while Clara got up from the sofa and walked to the window, peeking discreetly through the curtain. Lucy remained seated, but Arthur could tell she was observing every detail of Clara's behavior, ready to intervene if necessary. Soft footsteps echoed down the hallway, accompanied by the familiar click of high heels that Arthur recognized even after 2 years of separation. When Rachel appeared at the living room door, there was a moment of absolute silence. Rachel Johnson looked like a more subdued and serene version of the woman Arthur had known. Her blonde hair was cut into a sleek bob that framed her face, where Arthur could see a clarity in her green eyes that he hadn't seen in a long time. She wore a simple, navy blue dress, devoid of the excess jewelry and accessories that had characterized her style. But what stood out the most was her posture. There was a genuine humility in her expression, a vulnerability that contrasted with the arrogance that had defined her last years of marriage. "Clara," Rachel whispered, her eyes filling with tears at the sight of her daughter standing by the window. "Hi, Mommy," Clara replied softly, remaining where she was, clearly unsure of how to proceed. "Oh my God, how big you've gotten, and you're standing!" Rachel took a step toward her daughter but stopped upon noticing the girl's hesitation. Can I give you a hug?" Clara quickly glanced at Arthur, who gave her an encouraging nod, then at Lucy, who smiled warmly. Slowly she walked toward her mother. The hug between mother and daughter was cautious at first, but gradually became warmer. Rachel knelt to be at Clara's height, holding her as if afraid she might disappear at any moment. "I've missed you so much." "My love," Rachel murmured, her voice choked with emotion. "My beautiful little princess." "I missed you too, Mommy. Where have you been?" Rachel looked over Clara's head, meeting Arthur's eyes, who gave her a nearly imperceptible nod, permission to be honest within appropriate limits for a child. "Mommy was sick, my love. I had to go to a special place where the doctors helped me get better." "Like a hospital?" "Like a hospital, yes. But now Mommy is much better." Clara pulled back slightly, studying her mother's face with the natural curiosity of a child. "You look different." "Different how?" "More calm, and your eyes are brighter." Clara's innocent observation made Rachel smile through her tears. "It's because Mommy learned to take better care of herself. And you, my love? Tell me how you learned to walk again." Clara turned to look at Lucy, who had remained discreetly seated on the sofa. "Aunt Lucy, help me. She's a physical therapist and knows a bunch of fun exercises. Want to see?" Without waiting for a response, Clara began to demonstrate some of the stretches she had learned, moving with a grace and confidence that impressed Rachel. "This is amazing, Clara. You're perfect." Rachel turned to Arthur. "And who is Aunt Lucy?" "Rachel," Arthur stepped closer. "This is Aunt Lucy Fernandez, Clara's therapeutic coordinator." "Lucy, this is Rachel, Clara's mother." Lucy stood up respectfully. "Nice to meet you, Mom. Clara speaks very fondly of you." Rachel observed Lucy with interest, noticing the affectionate way Clara naturally positioned herself next to the older woman. "The pleasure is mine. Thank you for taking such good care of my daughter. Clara is a special girl. It has been a privilege to accompany her recovery." During the next hour, Rachel listened fascinated as Clara talked about her exercise routine, her cooking classes with Lucy, the new books she was reading, and the plants she had helped grow in the garden. It was evident that the girl's life had become rich in experiences and learnings that went far beyond physical recovery. "Clara," Rachel said at one point, "you seem so happy. Mommy is very glad to see this." "I am happy. Daddy lets me do a lot of cool things now, and Aunt Lucy teaches me things I never knew existed." Arthur watched the interaction, impressed with the maturity Clara showed while talking to her mother. The girl was clearly happy to reunite with Rachel, but she also maintained an emotional security that did not exist before the accident. "Arthur," Rachel addressed him during a pause in the conversation, "can I speak with you privately for a moment?" Arthur hesitated, but Lucy gently intervened. "Clara, how about we show your mommy the garden where we planted the flowers? She can see your vegetables too." "Great idea. Mommy, come see how I know how to take care of plants." As Lucy led Clara to the garden, Arthur and Rachel were left alone in the room, a tense silence settling between them. "She is completely different," Rachel finally said. "Not just physically, she is secure, confident. I've never seen her like this before." "Lucy has a special gift with children." "It's more than that, Arthur. Clara has formed a real bond with this woman. It's almost as if what? As if she has found the stable mother figure she needed." Rachel's observation touched on something Arthur had been avoiding confronting. In recent months, Lucy had occupied a space in Clara's life that went far beyond professional responsibilities. She had become the emotional reference, guiding the girl through her discoveries and daily challenges. "Rachel, why are you telling me this?" "Because I have a proposal to make, something that could be better for Clara than anything I could offer alone." Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. "What kind of proposal?" Rachel took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for something she had rehearsed many times. "There is a children's rehabilitation clinic in Germany, the best in the world for cases like Clara's. My partner has contacts there. They offered a spot for Clara." "Your partner?" "Dr. Klaus Hoffmann. He is a neurologist, specializing in childhood. Trauma. We met during my treatment." Rachel paused. "Arthur, this opportunity could ensure that Clara has access to the most advanced neurorehabilitation available." Arthur felt the world spinning around him. "Are you suggesting that Clara move to Germany?" "I'm suggesting we consider all options. Klaus has resources that neither you nor I can provide, and Clara deserves the best." From the garden came Clara's joyful laughter as she showed her plants to Lucy. Arthur looked out the window, seeing his daughter running freely on the grass, completely recovered and happy in her familiar environment. "Rachel," he said slowly, "Clara already has the best. She has a family that loves her and professionals who know her. Why would I risk that? Because you are a father who always wants the best for his daughter. and maybe it's time to consider that the best might not necessarily be here. Rachel's proposal hung in the air like a storm approaching, threatening to destabilize everything Arthur had built to ensure Clara's happiness and security. The week following Rachel's visit unfolded in an atmosphere of growing tension that permeated every corner of the Johnson mansion. Arthur found himself torn between the joy of seeing Clara, visibly happy after reuniting with her mother, and the anguish caused by the proposal that he couldn't get out of his mind. During the nights, lying in bed, Arthur obsessively replayed the details of the conversation. Rachel's offer was not just about medical treatment. It was about a completely new life for Clara, with unlimited resources, international education, and opportunities that even his considerable fortune could not provide in the United States. Dr. Klaus Hoffmann had sent a detailed dossier about the clinic in Munich, filled with impressive statistics and testimonials from families who had seen their children achieve levels of recovery considered impossible. "Daddy, are you okay?" Clara's voice interrupted his thoughts during Thursday morning coffee. "You've been very quiet these days." Arthur looked at his daughter, who was sitting at the table eating oatmeal that Lucy had prepared with fresh fruits. In recent months, he had grown accustomed to lively breakfast conversations, with Clara sharing her dreams from the previous night or making plans for the day. Now, even she noticed that something had changed in his demeanor. "I'm fine, my princess, just thinking about work." "Daddy always thinks about work," Clara shrugged, but continued to watch him with that insight that children sometimes display. Aunt Lucy said that sometimes adults worry about things they can't tell their kids. Arthur exchanged a glance with Lucy, who was preparing Clara's snack to take to her exercises at the club. In recent days, he had noticed that Lucy also seemed more observant, as if sensing that something important was being deliberated. "Aunt Lucy is right, but it's nothing you need to worry about." "Does it have to do with Mommy?" The direct question. Clara caught him off guard. "Why do you think that?" "Because after she left on Saturday, you changed, just like you used to when you two fought." Clara lowered her voice. "She's not going to get better, is she?" Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. Clara's intuition about the family dynamics was sharper than he had realized. "Your mum is trying very hard to get better, Clara. She loves you very much." "I know, but sometimes love isn't enough, right? Aunt Lucy explained to me that people can love each other a lot and still not be able to stay together." Arthur looked at Lucy, who discreetly signaled that she had talked to Clara about complex family relationships during one of their sessions. Once again, he was impressed by Lucy's sensitivity in anticipating Clara's emotional needs. "Mr. Arthur," Lucy approached, "if you allow me, I would like to talk to you after Clara leaves for the club. It's about, well, some observations I've made." Arthur nodded, sensing that Lucy had picked up on his dilemma. Over the months they had worked together, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to read his concerns before he even verbalized them. After Clara left for her activities at the Miami club with the driver, Arthur and Lucy sat on the porch, watching the calm morning activity in the south side. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of the flowers Clara had planted, creating a sense of homeliness that Arthur had learned to appreciate. "Mr. Arthur, may I speak frankly?" "You always can, Aunt Lucy. You're worried about something related to Clara's mother, and it's affecting your mood, your sleep, your way of interacting with the girl." Arthur sighed, recognizing that it would be futile to try to hide anything from someone who had become so attuned to the family dynamics. Rachel made a proposal about Clara's future. "What kind of proposal?" "There's a clinic in Germany specializing in pediatric neurological rehabilitation. They offered a spot for Clara." Lucy remained silent for several seconds, absorbing the implications of the information. "And you're considering it?" "I don't know. The rational part of my mind says I should consider any opportunity that could benefit Clara, but Clara is already well, completely recovered. Exactly. And more than that, she's happy here. She has a routine. She has people who love her, and Arthur hesitated. She has you. Lucy felt a pang in her chest. Over the months of caring for Clara, she had developed a maternal love for the girl that went far beyond her professional responsibilities. The idea of Clara moving to another country was painful in a way she hadn't anticipated. "Mr. Arthur, may I ask a question that might be inappropriate?" "Of course. Does this proposal from Germany include you, or would it just be Clara with her mother?" Arthur ran his hand through his hair, undoing the carefully styled look. "Rachel mentioned that her partner has the resources to cover everything: education, treatment, housing. She said Clara would have opportunities that even my money can't buy here in the US. And you would stay here. Presumably. My business is all here. I can't just move to Germany." Lucy nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Arthur, may I share something I learned while raising my children?" "Please." "A child doesn't need the perfect opportunity. A child needs emotional stability, to feel loved, to have roots. All the clinics in the world can't replace that." "But what if I'm being selfish? What if I'm denying Clara the chance to have a better life?" Lucy leaned forward, her voice heavy with maternal conviction. "Mr. Arthur, Clara already has a better life. Did you see her 3 months ago? She was a sad, withdrawn child, afraid of everything. Today she is a confident, joyful, curious girl. That didn't happen because of modern medical equipment. It happened because she found a home where she feels safe to be herself." Arthur contemplated Lucy's words, recognizing the deep truth in what she was saying. In recent months, he had witnessed a transformation in Clara that went far beyond physical recovery. His daughter had rediscovered the joy of living, but Rachel is her mother. If she has really changed, if she's sober and responsible. "Sir, being a biological mother is not the same as being the best option for a child. Sometimes the family we build is stronger than the family we are born into." At that moment, Arthur's phone rang. It was Dr. Smith, Clara's neurologist. "Arthur, I need to speak with you urgently. It's about Clara." "What happened?" "It's nothing serious. Actually, it's about the tests I requested last month. The results have come in and I need to discuss a few things with you." "Can you come to the office this afternoon?" "Sure. Is there a problem?" "Not exactly a problem, but there are some discrepancies I would like to clarify." After hanging up, Arthur turned to Lucy. "It was Dr. Smith. He wants to see me today to discuss Clara's tests." "Discrepancies can mean various things, sir, not necessarily something bad." "I know, but with everything that's happening—" Arthur paused. "Aunt Lucy, can I ask a favor?" "Of course. If anything happens to me, if I make a decision that takes me away from Clara, I want you to promise that you will always take care of her, no matter where she is." Lucy felt her eyes fill with tears. "Mr. Arthur, nothing is going to happen to you, and Clara will stay here with you where she belongs." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I see how she looks at you, and how you look at her. That kind of love isn't abandoned for modern clinics or international opportunities." Arthur watched Lucy, admiring once again her practical wisdom about matters of the heart. Maybe she was right. Maybe the best. Clara's life was exactly as it had always been, imperfect, simple, but built on a solid foundation of genuine love. What Arthur didn't know was that the conversation with Dr. Smith that afternoon would reveal information that would put all his doubts in a completely different perspective. Dr. Smith's office felt darker than usual when Arthur arrived at 4 in the afternoon. The heavy curtains blocked out part of the natural light, creating a solemn atmosphere that immediately put him on alert. The doctor was seated behind his mahogany desk, studying an open folder with the serious expression of someone about to reveal something significant. "Take a seat, Arthur. We have a lot to discuss." Arthur settled into the leather armchair, noticing that Dr. Smith had dismissed the secretary and closed the door, signs that the conversation would be private and delicate. "Clara's tests brought surprising results," the doctor began, adjusting his glasses. "Arthur, you told me that Clara had paralysis for 2 years due to spinal trauma, correct?" "Correct. You even made the initial diagnosis." "Exactly. And based on the tests at that time, it was a diagnosis consistent with the trauma suffered." Dr. Smith flipped through some papers in the folder. "But these new tests, Arthur, they show something completely different." Arthur felt his stomach tighten. "Different how?" "There are no signs of prior trauma in Clara's spine. No scars, no calcifications, no indication that she suffered any significant physical injury 2 years ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur felt as if the ground was disappearing beneath his feet. "How is that possible? You saw the images of the accident, the hospital report." "Yes, I saw everything. And at the time, with Clara unconscious and traumatized, all signs pointed to spinal injury. But now, looking back..." Dr. Smith paused. "Arthur, Clara's paralysis has been entirely psychosomatic from the start." "Psychosomatic?" Arthur repeated the word as if it were in a foreign language. "The psychological trauma from the accident, combined with the troubled family environment at the time, caused paralysis of purely emotional origin. Clara's brain, as a protective mechanism, simply shut down her legs." Arthur leaned back in the chair, trying to process the information. "But for 2 years, she couldn't move. Because she genuinely believed she couldn't. And when everyone around, including us, the doctors, reinforced that belief with treatments for physical paralysis, we created a cycle that perpetuated the condition. And what changed? Why has she improved now?" Dr. Smith closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "Arthur, based on what you told me about Clara's current routine, I believe the difference has been the emotional environment. She has been living with someone who doesn't see her as a paralyzed girl, but as a normal child who can do anything." "Aunt Lucy?" "Exactly. And more importantly, Clara developed a secure emotional bond with someone who believed in her ability to recover." Arthur remembered Aunt Lucy's words about how she had noticed that Clara had the will to get up, and how she had worked first with the girl's fears before any physical exercise. "Doctor, does this mean that It means you have been the best father you could have been under the circumstances. No one could have diagnosed this differently at the time. And the most important thing is that Clara is completely healed now." Arthur felt a mix of relief and guilt. "But I spent 2 years treating her like an invalid, and now you have the chance to make up for that. Arthur, there's something else I need to tell you." Dr. Smith leaned forward. "I received a call today from Dr. Klaus Hoffmann from the German clinic. He was requesting Clara's medical records." Arthur felt his blood run cold. Rachel was serious about the proposal. More than serious. Apparently, they have already initiated the bureaucratic procedures to transfer Clara to Munich. And Arthur, based on the old reports, the clinic approved the case as a priority. They believe Clara needs complex neurological intervention. "But you just told me there's no physical injury." "Exactly. Which means that if Clara goes to Germany, she will undergo completely unnecessary invasive treatments for a condition that has already healed naturally." Arthur stood up from the chair, beginning to pace the office. His mind was racing, connecting the implications of what he had discovered. "Doctor, I need those new reports, all the tests, all the evidence that Clara is completely healthy." "Of course. But Arthur, there's another problem. Legally, Rachel has maternal rights. If she claims that you are denying necessary medical treatment to your daughter, she could gain custody. Exactly. Especially if she has the support of a renowned neurologist arguing that Clara needs specialized care that only the German clinic can provide. Arthur stopped pacing, facing a terrible realization. Rachel was not necessarily trying to harm Clara, but her well-meaning ignorance could cause irreversible damage to the girl who had just fully recovered. "Doctor, how much time do I have?" "I don't know, but international medical transfer procedures can be quick when financial resources are involved." Arthur grabbed his phone and called home. Sarah answered. "Sarah, where are Clara and Aunt Lucy?" "In the garden, sir, doing exercises." "Listen carefully. Do not let Clara leave the house for any reason until I arrive. And if anyone shows up asking for her, anyone, you call me immediately." "Sir, is something wrong?" "Maybe. Just protect our family, Sarah." After hanging up, Arthur turned to Dr. Smith. "I need a favor, a detailed medical report stating that Clara is completely healthy and that any neurological intervention would not only be unnecessary, but potentially harmful." "You will have it, but Arthur, this could become a complex legal battle." "Then let's prepare for it. Clara is not leaving the United States, not while I'm alive." The journey back home felt like it lasted an eternity. Arthur was driving his Mercedes through the traffic jams of Miami with an urgency he hadn't felt in years, as if every lost minute could cost him his daughter. Upon arriving at the mansion, he rushed straight to the garden, where he found Clara and Lucy sitting on the grass, doing breathing exercises. "Daddy!" Clara waved cheerfully. "You're early today. Want to do some relaxation with us?" Arthur knelt on the grass beside his daughter, hugging her with an intensity that surprised her. "Clara, Daddy loves you very much. You know that, right?" "Of course I do, Daddy. Are you okay? You seem worried again." "I'm great now that I'm with you." Lucy watched the scene with a questioning look, noticing that something had drastically changed in Arthur's mood since the morning. "Mr. Arthur," she said softly, "can we talk later?" Arthur nodded, understanding that he would need to tell Lucy about the tests and the real threat looming over his family. But for now, he just wanted to be there, in the garden that Clara and Lucy had transformed into a little paradise, holding his daughter and knowing she was exactly where she needed to be. What Arthur didn't know was that Rachel was already on her way to Germany, accompanied by Dr. Hoffman and a legal team, prepared for a custody battle that would determine not only Clara's future, but the very definition of family that had formed in the Johnson mansion. The next 24 hours would be crucial in determining whether the love built through small daily miracles would be strong enough to withstand the powers of money, influence, and misguided good intentions. Monday morning dawned grey over Miami, with low clouds that seemed to foreshadow the storm about to hit the Johnson mansion. Arthur had spent the night awake, alternating between reviewing legal documents and watching Clara sleep peacefully in her room, as if he wanted to imprint every detail of those tranquil moments that might be coming to an end. At 7 in the morning, the phone rang. It was his lawyer, Dr. Robert Mendez. "Arthur, we have a problem. Rachel filed an emergency lawsuit last night requesting temporary custody of Clara for medical treatment abroad." Arthur felt his stomach tighten. On what grounds? Allegation of medical negligence. She presented reports from German specialists claiming that Clara needs specialized neurological treatment that is not available in the US, and that you are denying this treatment for personal reasons. But I have Dr. Smith's reports proving that Clara is completely cured. "I know, and we will use that. But Arthur, they have Dr. Klaus Hoffmann as an expert witness, and he is internationally recognized. Moreover, Rachel claims that Clara has developed an unhealthy emotional dependency on the staff of the house." Arthur clenched his fists. Is she referring to Aunt Lucy? Yes. They argue that this dependency may be preventing Clara from accepting appropriate medical treatment. When is the hearing? Today at 2 in the afternoon. Family court. Arthur hung up the phone and rushed to the garden, where he found Clara and Lucy doing their morning exercises. The scene seemed even more precious now that he knew he could lose her. "Good morning, Daddy," Clara waved, stretching in a way that demonstrated her fully recovered flexibility and strength. "Aunt Lucy was telling me about a summer festival she used to go to when she was a kid. Can we have a party here in the garden?" "Of course, my princess. We can do anything you want." Lucy immediately sensed the tension in Arthur's voice. "Clara, sweetheart, how about you go take a shower while I talk to your daddy about today's exercises?" After Clara went inside the house, Arthur sat heavily on the garden bench. "Aunt Lucy, I need to tell you something, and after this you can decide if you want to continue working here. Mr. Arthur, the way you're talking, it sounds like I won't have a choice." Arthur told her about the test results, Rachel's lawsuit, and the real possibility of Clara being taken to Germany. Lucy listened in silence, her hands trembling slightly. "So Clara never had a physical injury," she murmured. "I always suspected. That's why the exercises worked so quickly." "You knew?" "I didn't know, but I felt it. 20 years working as a physical therapist teaches you to notice these things." Clara's body responded in a way that was not typical of trauma-induced paralysis. "And now they're going to use you against us. They'll say Clara has developed an emotional dependency that prevents proper treatment." Lucy stood up, walking over to the flower she had planted with Clara. "Mr. Arthur, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you want me to step back? To not complicate the case?" The question hit Arthur like a punch. Over the past few months, Lucy had become much more than an employee. She was the emotional heart that kept his family together. But what if her presence really jeopardized their chances of keeping Clara? "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Maybe it would be better for the legal chances." "Mr. Arthur," Lucy interrupted, her voice filled with determination, "I am not going to abandon that girl. Not now, not ever. If you want to fire me, you'll have to do it. But I won't leave on my own." At that moment, Clara reappeared on the porch, wearing a sunny yellow dress that contrasted with the tension hanging over the adults. "Why do you both look like you're at a funeral? Did something bad happen?" Arthur and Lucy exchanged a glance. It was impossible to hide the situation from Clara for much longer, especially if she was called to speak with social workers or psychologists from the court. "Clara," Arthur approached his daughter, "Mummy wants you to go with her to Germany, to get special treatment there." "But I'm already cured," Clara replied with the simple logic of a child. "Why do I need—" "Is it about treatment?" "Mummy thinks you can get even better. But I don't want to get better. I want to stay here with you and Aunt Lucy." Clara looked from one to the other. "Do I have a choice?" "You do have a choice, my angel." Lucy knelt before Clara. "But sometimes adults need to talk a lot to understand what the best choice is." "Is that why you guys have to talk to a judge today?" Arthur was surprised by Clara's perception. "How do you know about the judge?" "I heard you talking on the phone, and Sarah was talking to the cook about lawyers and court." Clara crossed her arms. "I want to go with you. I want to talk to the judge too." "Clara, it doesn't work that way. Dad, I'm not the sick girl who couldn't decide anything anymore. I'm healed, I'm strong, and I know what I want." Clara positioned herself between Arthur and Lucy, holding both their hands. "I want to stay with my family." Arthur felt tears welling up in his eyes. In the past few months, he had seen Clara grow not only physically, but emotionally. His daughter had become a confident person, able to express her desires and stand up for them. "Mr. Arthur," Lucy whispered, "maybe this is what the judge needs to see. A confident, Determined, happy child, not a patient who needs to be protected from her own choices. At 2 in the afternoon, the family court in Miami was bustling with the Johnson case. Arthur arrived accompanied by his lawyer, Clara and Lucy. Across the hallway, Rachel was waiting with Dr. John Smith, a tall man with grey hair and an imposing appearance that radiated medical authority, and a team of lawyers. "Arthur," Rachel approached, her eyes focusing on Clara. "My love, you look so beautiful, ready for our adventure in Germany." "Hi, Mommy," Clara replied politely, but didn't let go of Lucy's hand. "I don't want to go to Germany. I want to stay home." Dr. Smith observed the interaction with clinical interest. "Clara, my name is John. I'm a doctor and I came here especially to meet you. I have a very nice clinic in Germany, with a heated pool and huge gardens." "Thank you, doctor, but I already have a pool and a garden here, and I have my family too." Clara's mature response clearly impressed the German doctor, who exchanged a meaningful glance with Rachel. When they were finally called for the hearing, Judge Dr. Fernando Almeida, a 50-year-old man experienced in complex family cases, studied everyone present attentively. "This is a delicate case," he began. "On one side, we have a mother seeking what she believes is the best treatment for her daughter. On the other, a father who claims that this treatment is unnecessary. And at the center, a 7-year-old child who seems to be in perfect physical and emotional condition." Dr. Smith presented his credentials and arguments for the need for specialized treatment. Dr. Smith countered with recent reports. Lawyers from both sides presented their legal positions. But it was when the judge asked to speak privately with Clara that everything changed. "Clara," said Dr. Almeida in his office, "tell me what your life is like at home." For 20 minutes, Clara talked about her exercises with Lucy, about the recipes they learned together, about how her dad had changed and become more present, about her plants in the garden, and her dreams of throwing a family reunion for everyone. "And if you could choose," the judge asked, "where would you like to live?" "At home, with my dad and Aunt Lucy. They are my real family." When they returned to the courtroom, Dr. Almeida had already made his decision. Based on the minor's testimony, the current medical reports confirming her complete recovery, and the direct observation of her emotional and psychological well-being, I determine that Clara Johnson shall remain in the custody of her father, Arthur Johnson. Rachel began to protest, but the judge continued. "However, I recognize the maternal rights of Mrs. Rachel and establish a monthly supervised visitation schedule, with the possibility of review after 6 months, contingent upon the maintenance of her sobriety." Arthur felt his legs weaken with relief. Clara ran to hug him, then to hug Lucy. "Additionally," the judge added, "I recommend that Mrs. Lucy Johnson be officially registered as Clara's therapeutic coordinator, formally recognizing her essential role in the minor's recovery." 3 months later, on a sunny September afternoon, the garden of the Johnson mansion was decorated with colorful banners, the smell of corn pudding in the air, and northeastern music playing loudly. Clara, completely healed and radiating happiness, danced with Arthur, who wore a plaid shirt borrowed from the gardener. Lucy, now officially the child development coordinator for the Johnson family, watched the scene with the satisfied smile of someone who had witnessed a miracle grow day by day. Rachel was present too, sober for 8 months, participating in the celebration with the reserved joy of someone relearning how to be a mother. "Aunt Lucy," Clara shouted amidst the music, "come dance with us. It's our family reunion." As she joined the dance, Lucy thought about how miracles rarely arrive with fanfare. They grow silently, in daily care, in hugs given at the right moment, in the courage to believe that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. The Johnson mansion had transformed into something Arthur never imagined possible, a true home where Imperfections were embraced, where laughter echoed through the halls, and where an improvised family had discovered that love is not measured by DNA or legal documents, but by the willingness to be present in the moments that truly matter. Don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's very exciting.